Hi, folks. Welcome to the Q's Views, where everyone's entitled to our opinion. It's another episode of our full-time journeys, and this time we're going to talk about a couple of places where we did a lot in Arizona. The first place that we went down to was in the Cottonwood area, which is about halfway between Flagstaff and Phoenix. In the Verde Valley, and we stayed at a Thousand Trails resort called the Verde Valley RV Resort. Go ahead. You see, we have our own plateau to get.
Right, and the way the RV sites are arranged, you just keep going up to these different plateaus. Well, we had our own little plateau with two other RVs, and they're long timers, so they were gone, and so we had this entire place by ourselves. And a mouse that decided to visit us.
We had our first mouse in the RV. Quite the experience. And we found out one thing that works for, at least for this particular mouse, is that he or she did not like dryer sheets. So we plugged up some holes with steel wool from the outside, but dryer sheets on the inside. And eventually the mouse decided that they didn't like the smell and left.
Thank goodness we didn't take it with us.
No, but that mouse took a little bit of raisin bread with.
Right, it enjoyed our raisin bread.
That's right. So, alrighty, and so we're confident that the mouse is gone. Knock on wood. Alrighty, so that was 1,000 Trails. Once again, it was we're in the desert during summer so it's really hot. Something about being in the Arizona area and in some of these desert locations is that the water pressure for the RVs is really low. It comes out to a trickle. So one of the tricks of the trade that we basically utilize, is that we use the low water pressure and over a period of a couple of hours fill our water tank, and then once it's like 3/4 full, then we basically flip it back over, and we use the water in our water tank to do everything.
And we put the pump on, and the pump is really good. So
so the pump works really well for showers.
We got to actually take
dishes.
showers.
Yeah, exactly, and had some decent water pressure through our pump. So that was again, we used the city water to fill our tank, and then we used the water in our tank to actually have some decent pressured water. So that was Verde Valley RV Resort in Cottonwood. There was so much to do in that area. A lot of it was just within an hour drive at most. In the Cottonwood area, it's in the Verde Valley, and that is going to be, they've applied to become one of the newest viticultural areas in the United States, called an AVA. And so Verde Valley wines are very well known in Arizona. So we decided to sample the goods, and went to one wine tasting room. Actually went to two, but one that we really enjoyed called Arizona Stronghold, right there in downtown Old Town Cottonwood, and they were delicious.
Yeah. There were just a few of us in there, so we felt like we were safe and we weren't crowded into anything.
Yep, they are. Folks are keeping really good control on who comes in, how many people come into their shops, and how they space them out. So right there near Cottonwood, there's a couple of national monuments, and I just learned this the other day, is that the difference between a national monument and a national park is that a president can declare an area or a place a national monument, whereas a national park requires an act of Congress. And I'm sure I read that somewhere, but I didn't remember it until just recently. So,
and many times a national park is born out around a national monument.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a monument, and then it gets the national park designation.
Exactly. In fact, Joshua Tree, it was one of those. It was a national monument. It just became a national park in the early '90s. So, but back to Verde Valley. One of the national monuments that we visited, which I'll show a picture of, is Montezuma's Castle, and it is a cliff dwelling in an area where there were a lot of Native Americans that were living in, I think Beaver Creek was right near Beaver Creek, and so this was where families that were, I think, a little more prestigious were living in this cliff dwelling. Absolutely stunning, the work and the preservation to make sure that this was all available for viewing for the public. So again, we'll show you a picture. So what were your impressions when you first saw that monument?
Oh, well, it was amazing because it's over 700 years old, and the structure itself, many parts of the structure is still there. So obviously they knew what they were doing, and it was Oh, awesome.
And so just on the other side of Cottonwood, right near that town, is another national monument called the Tuzigoot National Monument. That's Tuzigoot. And that's where they found, it was this mound, and when they started excavating it, they found these wonderful rock ruins of walls and structures, and quite elaborate. Reminded me almost of some of the Inca excavations that they had in Mexico. I'm sorry, in South America, and in the Aztec ruins in Mexico. So the Tuzagoots, you saw rooms, you saw the pottery and the pottery shards, and some of and arrowheads and all sorts of things that that particular Indian nation were using at the time. So again, the Verde Valley was teeming with people and life, and it was kind of like a trade center for a lot of folks. Yeah. So we went. Their museum was open. Again, not a whole lot of folks there. When we went into the basically it's a one-room museum. There were maybe 4 of us there total. So well worth an hour or two to off the beaten path to go see that. And then down in downtown Cottonwood, it was kind of a cute little town. Had a number of places to stop in, and one of the places that we saw had just reopened during this pandemic, and it was a bookstore. And they had a wonderful sign a rainbow sign in the window that said not just Black Lives Matter and human beings count. And again, I'll post a picture of that sign. We were very impressed that there was this little bastion of liberal thought in a pretty conservative area. All right. And speaking of conservative areas, what we're seeing more and more of is, and thank goodness, is appropriate use of masks. I think folks here in Arizona possibly were concerned about the fact that they had such high rates of infection with COVID. And so we're seeing many folks taking very seriously the use of masks. Of course, there's always a few that are making it a political statement, but for the most part, we felt that that folks are respecting other people. So that was good. Near about, I'd say, half an hour north of Cottonwood is Sedona, Arizona.
Oh, it was beautiful.
How so?
Once again, the rock formations, you're driving and you just see this striata, is that what it'd be called, of the rocks and the different colors, and it was beautiful. Yeah.
So you see the green trees in the valley, and you see this red rock shooting straight up from the valley floor. So it's just a stunning place. We went up to a little a summit within Sedona, right near the airport, where you can see a 360-degree view of all of the area and take fabulous pictures. So we hiked up to that, and again, well worth the 15-20 minutes it took to get to the top of that summit.
And you felt like you were standing on top of the world. Everywhere, everywhere around you, where you were surrounded by these mountains.
Yeah, and folks have described Sedona almost as a spiritual place, and there's a lot of signs around there talking about vortexes of energy and psychic
crystals
energy,
and
all that crystal stuff. Yeah, it's kind of fun to read some of those signs and to see how folks have taken their art and their inspiration from their art from the area itself. Then there's a little mining town which is just west of Cottonwood called Jerome. Again, you'll see pictures of that in our video here. It is a copper mining town, a big booming copper mining town, and it's built basically up on the side of hills and these mountains, just west of Cottonwood. A lot of visitors come up there for the day to do antique shopping and window shopping, and it was quite crowded.
Yeah, and there was quite a few couple people riding motorcycles up there. So the streets were small and it was loud, and then it started getting crowded.
Yeah.
So,
in fact, we were driving. We were leaving the area at a stop, and we were stopped at a stop sign, and this couple, 4 or 5 folks who had just gotten off their Harleys walked by the front of our car and saw our South Dakota license plates and gave us the thumbs up for Sturgis, for the Sturgis Motorcycle Rally. I've never been to Sturgis.
It's the first time I've been mistaken for a Republican.
And for a South Dakotan.
And for a South Dakotan.
So anyway, That was kind of fun. I gave him the thumbs up back. There you go. All right, yay Sturgis. So that was Jerome. Kind of a funky little, fun little place, and some good little arts and crafts shops there. Then from there, from the Cottonwood area, we used that to take the hour drive up to Flagstaff. We come through Flagstaff, but we went back up to Flagstaff, and we went to specifically to the Museum of Northern Arizona.
What a museum!
Yeah, yeah. It's a smaller museum, but they have dedicated huge spaces in their museum to a description of Native American tribes and the people.
And their artwork.
Oh my God!
And, you know, writing and art and crafts, and it was pretty amazing.
They had a special exhibit they were showing there, a Navajo exhibit, where Navajos had translated Star Wars, the original episode, into the Navajo language, and had worked with
mostly young
George
people.
Lucas's folks, absolutely. And they had R2D2 that was decorated almost like petroglyphs. It was just unique, interesting, and a bridging of old traditions into new culture. So it was something to see. I was fascinated by it, and some of the parallels between the costumes in Star Wars and Navajo costuming. All right.
They actually have like a Comic-Con, but they have it for Native Americans and Star Wars, and so the costumes were very unique, but the Force was with them.
Yeah, all right. So then from Cottonwood, we were there for a week. From Cottonwood, we moved on to Mesa, Arizona, which is just east of Phoenix, and it's in the Phoenix area. And we stayed up at an RV place called Mesa Spirit RV Resort, which is an Encore park that is attached to our Thousand Trails program. So again, for us, it didn't cost us any additional dollars in just our membership. Once again, turn on the tap after hooking up, and it got a trickle. At most a trickle. It kind of a park, mostly a lot of full-timers and seasonal folks are there. So in October, when the weather starts turning cold up in the northern states, a lot of the snowbirds come south, and a lot of the parks in Mesa, Arizona and the Phoenix area tend to fill up with folks who are there for the winter season. So a lot of services for seniors and for folks who are wintering in warmer climates. So that was Mesa Spirit. Would you go there again?
To that RV park?
Yeah.
No, I'd probably choose something else.
Likewise, it needs a little tender loving care.
But it was free, right?
Yeah, nice amenities.
Yeah, okay, we like free.
Nice amenities, free to us, but again, probably needs a little TLC.
And it was close to the things we wanted to do.
Right.
My niece Kristen lives in Chandler, which is right outside of Phoenix, and so we got a chance to safely visit with Kristen and meet her dog and go to a couple dog parks, so that was fun.
That's great. So in the area, there was so much to do in the Phoenix area. So one of the first things we did was we went to the Desert Botanical Garden. Yes, we did, even though it was hot. We went first thing in the morning, as soon as they opened up. And it was amazing. They had these wonderful paths that they had, a hardscape that they put into the museum, and you could go into the Chihuahuan desert environment, the Sonoran desert environment, the local desert area. It was just amazing.
And the thing that was really cool is they talked about how Native people of the past utilized the plants from their desert. So I found that extremely interesting.
Yeah. So that was a good couple hours we spent at that place, and then we went out to the Museum of Musical Instruments.
Wow. One of the best museums we've ever been to in our entire lives. We needed 2 days. Didn't realize it, but we needed 2 days really to see everything.
We only went one day, and it's interesting is that all the stuff that we saw online doesn't do it justice. This is a world-class, full-on museum. And they had a special exhibit there, and again, I'll post pictures as you'll see. They had a special exhibit on Congo masks and the music of the Congo.
And the lore, all the stories that went behind it.
Yeah, and then they had all the different rooms of the music of the different geographies throughout the world, like North America, South America, the U.S., out in every, the Russian area, the Europe, Asia, and with each exhibit, they had headphones that were linked to a little pack that you wore that activated as soon as you approached an exhibit with the music of that exhibit. So it was very ingenious. There I got a chance to, they had a Stevie Ray Vaughan exhibit with some of his stuff, including one of his guitars with the SRV on it. And then they had a 1950s Les Paul Gold Top, and for you electric guitar players out there, that guitars were tens of thousands of dollars. This is one of the first 50 1950s Les Paul Gold Tops ever made. So it was amazing to see it in person, all right there. So I would highly recommend, if you get an opportunity,
definitely spend 2 days.
Spend 2 days, because if you're a music fan, it takes that long to get to the museum. And we were there for what, 4.5 hours.
And it's not, it's not just the music, it's all the culture, and then the peoples and their instruments and everything that goes with it.
Yep.
And so it was amazing.
They have a whole sub-exhibit on Martin guitars and the history of Martin guitar making, and then marching bands, and you name it.
They had it.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the things that we also did in that area is we went to a museum called the Herd Museum, H-E-R-D, the Herd family, and they dedicated a museum to Native American arts and Native American culture, and that, again, another world-class museum in downtown Phoenix. And you'll see one of the pictures that I'll show here is a fence made of glass, blown glass, that you'll see Carolyn standing next to. And the place is just stunning. And then one of their most popular but most sobering exhibits is the one about Indians going to boarding school, being forced to go to boarding schools, and something that I was not aware of this history, and that in one of the philosophies of white people trying to deal with what they felt was an issue with Native Americans was they wanted to unenculturate them, so they basically ripped families apart and took young children away from their homes and forced them to go to boarding schools where they were going to enculturate them to the the American culture, and the issues of depression and suicide and illness because of forced cohabitation. It was depressing, but at the same time, at the end of that exhibit, it showed how while the white man was trying to enculturate the Native American, they actually flipped that in the end, and basically I think they called it the Indianization of boarding schools, is where they started taking over the cultural programs of the boarding schools, and it became a sense of hope, and that they could take something so negative and turn it into a positive in their lives. So take a tissue.
Right. And some of the people who were on some of the video recordings talking about their experience, these were people who actually lived through the boarding schools, or their grandparents lived through the boarding schools, and they're still suffering the repercussions of that. There were something like 87 boarding schools across the United States. That's a lot. That went on for years and years and decades. And some of them are still there today, but now they're cultural centers that share the story behind it. So
the museum talks not just about the culture, but also about the atrocities, the genocide, as well as the forced boarding schools and the forced marches. So I think it's a piece of our history that we have to own up to, and that we have to understand and come to grips with. So it was a museum that enlightened me, and I'll never forget it. So that was the Herd Museum. Then another place we went to in downtown Phoenix, probably a little too late in the day because it got pretty hot, was Roosevelt Row, which was it's an area of town where artists are allowed to paint the sides of buildings with their art. It's kind of like inner city art. You'll see in the photographs that I'm going to show with this video is that you'll see a tractor trailer, like an 18-wheel trailer that's painted with art, along with the tires, and the sides of buildings and the sides of parking lots and retaining walls. Yep.
Yeah.
And the art is stunning. Absolutely. So it reminds me of some of the art that you'll see in San Diego.
And San Francisco.
Yeah, exactly. On the sides of buildings. So well worth a couple of hours to walk around there. It's kind of spread out though.
It is, and one of the reasons is there's so much development right there right now that actually they're losing a lot of the artwork when it's behind chain link fences. You know it's going down.
Yeah.
So I don't know how long the murals will be there.
All right, and so the last thing that we did, even though it's not technically in the Phoenix area, is we took a 1 hour drive down to, it was longer than that, like an hour and a half drive, down to the northern Tucson, Arizona, and went to Saguaro National Park. One of our goals, as we've told you before, is to visit as many national parks as we can, and that was worth the drive.
I was speechless. It was all these tall sentinels just everywhere you can see, and I've never seen that many squirrel cactuses in my entire life.
Yeah, and we took a chance, and it worked out okay. Where we took the car on a dirt road,
Off-roading.
Well, not quite off-roading, but felt like it. The ruts and all that stuff, but did well. We drive a Ford Edge, and it did well on the dirt road. But we were able to see it's like about a 5.5-6 mile loop of the park, and well worth doing if you have an opportunity to do that. And did a little bit of a small little half-mile hike on one of the washes near the museum itself. While the museum and the visitor center were closed, the bookstore was open, and we were able to get some information from the ranger who was near the bookstore. So, again, Saguaro National Park. It's one of these things. Our national parks are a phenomenal gift to us, and when we go through the gates of these or approach the national parks, we're just our heads are on a swivel, and we're awed by the different geology and flora and the wildlife and all the stuff that we see in the national park. So it's quite an adventure we're on.
The only thing I wish it would have been early spring, because that's when the saguaro cactuses flower and all the other plants flower around it. So we're obviously too late for flowering, but I saw pictures and it was just bursts of color. I would have loved to have seen it.
Yeah. So again, thanks for listening to us. This was quite a long adventure for us. This particular leg, there was so much to do. So coming up after this, we'll be talking about our trip to Joshua Tree National Park. And so we look forward to you joining us on more adventures. Remember, if you liked the video, hit like. If you didn't hit the video, hit like anyway. Subscribe to the video, and make sure you hit those reminder buttons, so that notification buttons, so that you know when we post a new video. Thanks for following us, and it's good to be able to share this all. Remember, this is the Q's Views, where everyone's entitled to our opinion. Take care. Bye.